generally, I was mentioning that if we make a city for people, where people meet other people regularly in the course of their daily doings, that is principally a safer community you are creating. That I have been in the Danish Crime Prevention Board for quite many years, and all the time that was the policy: bring people out, let them meet naturally. Don't let the only contact with the society be seeing in the television who was arrested last night, but go out and see all the nice people who are in your community. So these principles are there, but of course society policies play a bigger role. But there's very few arguments not to be friendly to walking and bicycling in cities, and that's what I think we should focus on. And I would also like to point to the fact that now we have been speaking very fast, for a year and a half, for an hour and a half, and we have not mentioned sports, none of us, or super activities, which is the icing on the cake. We have been talking about everything from children to very old people, from 8 years, actually I started with 1 year, we talk about something which is for everyone in society and for all the life and for the daily day. And then, of course, it's wonderful if also there are fascinating extra things that the more actives can do. I have focused very much on that in the whole span of life, there are great periods when you don't have time or energy or health to go to a health facility. And then these are the times when a city which is inviting you to use your muscles in the daily day is a very good thing. There are not many sports activities offered in Venice, but still they are very slim, all of them. They do 20,000 steps a day in Venice, which I think is very good for them, and we could aim for that in our own societies.
Thank you very much.
Safety. One comment on safety, because it's very important. This woman asked a question about Mexico. In Mexico, they were starting to have crime like in almost all developing countries, and the national government is doing a fantastic program through the Secretary of Social Development. They are improving 1,000 parks, neighborhood parks across the country. So the goal is 5,000 parks in 5,000 years, when the national government is putting half of the money and the local government is putting the other half. And it's not a program to promote sports, but it's a program to improve safety in the neighborhoods. In the park that I mentioned, Bryant Park, that they had the issue of the drugs, and it used to be called Needle Park. Some people said, oh, all we have to do is bring the police and get the 10 people that are throwing drugs out. Eventually they will go to another park. But instead they did, if you have 10 people and no one else, it seems like the problem is huge. But if you got the same 10 people, but now you have other 2,000 people watching movies, playing chess, reading books, all of a sudden the problem minimizes. And finally, it's also the chicken and the egg. Part of it is that once you get more people out, people are a lot safer. The best way to have public places that are safe is when they are very well used. When they are empty, you know, when things happen in the parks, it's more dangerous a park at 11 o'clock in the morning when not many people are, than at 7 a.m. when everybody's running and walking. So I think that that's also, and when people, so that's why also you have to build parks and public places as good as possible, because that is also sending an image that people belong, about human dignity, and then people behave a lot better. When they are in a better sidewalk, they behave much better than when they are in one full of garbage.
Thank you. You have a question here?
Yeah, thank you. Jacob Kornbeek, European Commission Sport Unit, not the citizenship unit that has supported the conference financially, but the sport unit, which is very interested in the conference and the content. And I was very intrigued also by this issue of safety. And I was intrigued by how exactly you get support for such an initiative like this long walking and biking trail in Bogota, which linked up an affluent with a poor neighborhood. And the people in the affluent neighborhood, were they overruled or were they convinced in the end? That would be my question to Gil, because I suppose that planning errors in many cities are not entirely coincidental. that they actually reflect some political choices, because people in the affluent neighborhoods would not like to get too close to the people in the less affluent neighborhoods. And my second question would be to Jan. I've been a Danish expat since 1981, so I've always been watching from the sidelines how the media coverage of youth crime in Denmark has changed over the last 30 years. And it's obvious, comparing with the kind of coverage and the kind of political messages you find in some continental countries, that in Denmark there is a very strong focus on fear of one community vis-à-vis another community. How come that in a country where obviously very many people are concerned with, let's say, tensions between communities, that it's actually not a problem to link them up geographically, to have both excellent urban transit and bike trails that link the different communities? How can you explain that on the one hand you have quite a predominance of these fear-based ideas in politics and in elections, and at the same time you also manage to link up the communities? That's something I find very intriguing and would like to understand better.
Well, the issue of the upper class and the rich people is always very difficult. Because, for example, when you are having these gigantic fights to get the cars out of the sidewalk, the most powerful people are very much against, because they want to have their car and go up to the door of the restaurant. If they could, they go into a restaurant with the car. So it is very difficult. And at the same time, the low income are not making loud their petitions. So when we were doing that trail that you mentioned, it was very difficult. Sometimes we tend to think that, you know, the grass is greener on the next door neighbor, that things are easy somewhere. In my city it's so difficult. No, everywhere is difficult, but also everywhere is doable. The Janet Sadikans of the world in New York. When we started doing that, for example, we were having public meetings in the rich neighborhoods where the trail began. And some of the people were saying, oh, we don't want any playgrounds in this park. And I said, what do you mean you don't want any playground? Don't you have any children? And they said, yes, but they go and play in the country club. And they didn't want playgrounds because we were going to put these places where the women were selling, low-income women were selling flowers. And they said, if we have playgrounds, these low-income women are going to bring their children. And we don't want our children mixing with their children. Can you imagine how sickening? And I said, precisely we were going to do one playground. Because of that comment, now we're going to do 3. And we did 3 of those. So it is difficult. Well, you saw also part of the linear park was going in front of a golf course, a private golf course, and the people in the private golf course opposed a lot because that's the wealthiest golf course in the city. And they said, oh no, we don't want people coming by because they're going to watch us play golf. And I said, what do you mean? They said, we're going to raise a wall. If you do that, we raise a wall. I said, look, you don't pay property taxes because that land is reserved for greening the city. You put 1 brick, and we start charging 100% property tax as if that was a commercial site. They never put a brick and the trail went by. So yeah, I think at some point, once again, we talk about the common denominator being the general interest. What is in the general interest? But some of these issues are some of the issues that people are contemplating and are taking place. But precisely, and I end with this, that's what we need. You know, Central Park in New York was done by Frederick Olmsted 155 years ago. And with the things that he writes at that time, he said in New York, everybody hated everybody. The locals and hated the immigrants, the blacks and the white, the rich and the poor. And he said, you know, one of the things is that people do not see each other. They don't live in the same buildings, they don't go to the same schools, they don't go to the same restaurants. So we have to create places where people can actually see each other and meet each other as equal. And that was how Central Park was created 155 years ago. And that's why we need walkable cities with sidewalks and plazas and this. That's why we're going to make cities inviting. It's not just where pedestrians can walk, it's not how long, where they can fit, but no, to make it very inviting, because that's how we're going to make communities that are much more inclusive, and at the end of the day, healthier communities with happier residents.
Yeah, there was this other question, which I hope I understood correctly. Anyway, when I was in the Crime Prevention Board, the Kriminalpræventive Råd, we realized that all the things we, from a more humanistic point of view, wanted to do with cities were very also what would help the crime prevention. And we found that if you talk about crime prevention, you have much easier ear to the politicians and the press. So if we talked about crime, we could get a lot of money to do the things we would like to do anyway. Fine. So that was a vehicle there to get into some of the resources. Actually, you can see this change, these vehicles. Now we have the climate challenge. If you say we are doing this for the climate challenge, then you will have the ear of the press and the politicians, and you can do good things generally. And we also have the health issue. If you say we are doing it for health, and that was exactly why I pointed out that if we are making people-friendly cities, we are addressing the liveliness, the attractiveness, the safety, the sustainability, and the health, the culture of health in the city in the same time and with the same dollars. And as far as I'm concerned, I think it's much more important to talk about quality of life and dignity of man than talk about crime and health and sustainability, because that is to me an overriding thing that we have to make cities for people where people can thrive, where young and old can live and have a good life. But then, of course, the debate changes from one to the other from time to time, and we can use these vehicles. But we shall realize that by doing people-oriented policy, we reach all the goals.
Thank you very much. Can you assist me to thank Gil Penalosa and Gil for the presentation?